my name is Daniel and welcome to SoftRock's training video number 3 for Quikslope5 viewing graphs. Let's start by looking at all the different types of graphs you can run in Quikslope5. Now you can select which graph to run in Quikslope5 up on the graphing toolbar in the far left hand corner. There's a drop down menu of all the different types of graphs you can run. The first thing we should look at is the difference between 3D and 2D graphs. 2D graph contains all your northern and eastern readings but doesn't factor in the z-axis or what's commonly referred to as elevation, whereas your 3D graphs takes into account all three axes, your northern and eastern readings as well as the elevation. Let's continue looking at the graphs. The XYZ movement graph graphs the plotting of all the northern, eastings and elevation readings, as you can see here. The field data graph is all of the data straight from the instrument and includes the horizontal and vertical angle readings measured in seconds of degrees. The unadjusted distance graph is all of the data graphed for this prism without any of the atmospheric or reference adjustments, whereas the adjusted distance graph contains the atmospheric and reference adjustments. The unadjusted and adjusted distance graph contains both, so you can see the difference between the two. Now let's look at the different types of velocity graphs you can run in Quikslope5. Now we've got 2D type velocity graphs and SD type velocity graphs, and the SD is short for slope distance. Now when we're talking about velocity, velocity is always expressed in these graphs as millimeters per day, and you can look at either velocity over the last 12 hours, the last 24 hours, or the last 48 hours. Now let's have a look at the 2D 24-hour velocity graph. Now let's continue looking at the rest of the graphing toolbar. We're just looking at the select graph drop-down list of all the different types of graphs you can run in Quikslope5. Now next to that is a drop-down list of all the clusters in the database. Now the origin of the cluster name has come from either the GMOS group name or from the area name in Quikslope4. Now say I wanted to graph all the prisms in the cluster I selected. All I would need to do is go next to the drop down list and press this activate button, which graphs all the prisms in a cluster. And there you can see now that all the prisms in the east wall cluster are graphed. Now if I wanted to go back and just graph a singular prism, I would just need to go next to this first activate button and to the prism drop down list. Now this prism drop down list will give me all the prisms that exist in the cluster that I've chosen in the cluster drop down list. So the prism I had before was MPE 12016, and to graph just that singular prism I would select this second activate button, which will just graph the prism that I've got selected. And there you see now just a singular prism is graphed. Now next to the second activate button we have a toggle button that switches between showing all prisms and hiding the inactive prisms in the drop down prism list. The reason we have this feature in Quikslope5 is because on some sites, when you're dealing with hundreds if not thousands of prisms, a lot of those prisms have since been made inactive, and it makes it much easier for navigation to be only dealing with the prisms that are active. Now next to this toggle button we have where you can set the graph scale. And for example, I'm going to set this graph to minus 10 millimeters per day to a maximum of plus 10 millimeters per day. And then to set that scale, I just select the activate button here. As you can see, it is now set to a maximum value of 10 millimeters per day and a minimum value of minus 10 millimeters per day. Now if I want to go back to the the default values for the graph scale, all I need to do is select this last activate button, which will reset the scale back to the defaults. Let's take a look at some of the other features of viewing graphs in Quikslope5. Now if I wanted to zoom in on a particular point in the graph, all I would need to do is to come down and press the zoom button and then click and drag a box of the area that I wish to zoom in on, which would then zoom in to that area. Now if I need to pan up or down or left and right in that area, I would just need to use the sliders on the graph here to pan up and down, or this slider here to pan left and right. Now once I finish looking at this area and I want to zoom back out, I just have to hit the zoom button again, which zooms back to where I was before. Now there's a shortcut in the bottom right hand corner of the graph that allows you to graph either the previous prism in the drop down list of prisms or the next prism after the prism is currently graphed. And all you have to do is either hit the up arrow or the down arrow. If I click the down arrow, it's gone and graphed the next prism in the list, and then if I hit the up arrow, it's gone and graphed the previous prism in the drop down list. You can also use the down and up arrows on the keyboard to facilitate the same function. Pressing down to graph the next prism, or pressing up to graph the previous prism. Now you might have noticed with the graph that there's a red gradient background. This is to do with the type of data you're looking at. When it's a red gradient background, you would be viewing shape data, and if you look in the top right hand corner, it'll state what type of data you're looking at. As you can see there, it's saying viewing shape data. Now if you wanted to view raw data, you would just right click on the graph and select show raw data. And now you'll see that there's a blue gradient background in the graph. And if you look to the top right hand corner, it's now saying viewing raw data. And quite easy to switch back, you just right click on the graph and select view shape data. There is also a shortcut key up on the graphing toolbar that allows you to toggle between viewing shape data and viewing raw data. Finally, if you'd like to see in the graph the data points of a particular point in the graph, all you need to do is hover over that point and it will give you the data points. And you can do that to any point in a graph.